So we will be starting off with the presentation. This is the first workshop out of two. The second workshop will take place on Thursday. So let's begin then. So this is the IT project management. Can you guys also see my screen?
Yes.
You can? Okay.
Not anymore.
Not anymore?
Yeah.
Is it visible now?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So we'll be starting off. This is the IT Project Management 101 course. This is the first workshop in a series of two. So to begin, the goal of this workshop is basically to take vague ideas that you might have about projects that you want to do, services that you want to build, and turn them into something that is structured, something that you guys can very easily structure and work upon. So in big tech companies, there are certain processes that they follow. Companies like Google, Meta, Amazon, they have certain processes that they follow because in IT things are evolving very fast. So you need to be on top of things, and you need to make sure that as requirements change, so does your output and end goal. So to start off then, how this course will work, there will be a workshop today. This is the first workshop, after which you'll have first initial meetings with your mentors. Then there will be some quizzes, some resources that you guys can look at and to test your knowledge. Then we'll have the second workshop. Then from then on we'll have weekly meetings, and at the end of the month we'll have a checkpoint, a review to see what progress has been done and what is still left to do. So what we expect from you guys is to work on actual projects, keep your board updated. We'll explain what a board is, and be prepared and attend all the stand-ups, the meetings, and if there's any problems that you guys face, anything that's blocking you from proceeding, you should raise them immediately with your mentor. Now, if you've already seen the student guide, there's some topics in it. Today we'll be covering all the way from until sprint planning. There's also going to be a book, but it will be shared later on, perhaps after the second workshop, but it's not mandatory for you to read the book. You just have to look over the student guide basically. So starting off with the first concept, the core problem that we're aiming to solve today is that you get in IT departments, you usually get some vague requests, such as that we need some better website before our next event. Now to turn this into a more clarified action, and something that is actionable, some into smaller tasks that you can do, is you first have to ask questions to stakeholders. You first have to ask questions like, what does better mean? What exactly must change? And what is this event? When is it? And what exactly do we want to see in terms of progress? So these are all questions that as an IT department you have to ask both yourselves and your fellow executives. Now, project, what we mean by a project is it's a temporary work that has a clear goal and a start and end and specific outcome. So something like maintaining an IT website or maintaining some IT service, that is not a project, that is just maintenance, and um, something that is you're probably building from scratch is what we term as a project. So something like creating an entity website or redesigning it from scratch, that is an IT project. But running the website and monitoring it, changing something on the website, that is not really a project. Product is something that is created when you are done with your project. The product will continue to exist and it will deliver value after your project ends. So if your project is to redesign the website, the entity website, then your product at the end will be that website, or it will be the IT service that you worked upon. Task is something that is small. It is a specific unit of work. For example, it can be something like writing content for the homepage or changing some image on the website. It's usually something that can be done in a day or two, and it's something that only one person should probably be responsible for, so that they can coordinate things better. And there can be accountability of has this task been done? If not, then why not? Maintenance, we discussed this a bit before. It is basically, as you would expect, it's ongoing work that has to be done to keep a product running after it has been delivered. Maintenance has no end date, and the thing with maintenance is that you should not just be thinking about maintenance in terms of your tenure. You should be thinking about maintenance that can be done and should be done after you retire. And the biggest thing for that, I think the challenge that almost all IT departments might face is a lack of documentation. Meaning that, for example, if NLX Eats has a portal, if there's no documentation, just there's verbal communication, verbal teaching of how to add a new vendor, for example, then if it's not written down somewhere, unexpected things can happen. People can leave suddenly. So if there's no documentation, then it gets very hard to maintain stuff. So ensuring that you have proper handover and proper documentation for your IT projects is very important. Otherwise your effort will be wasted. Project brief is like something that you uh, can use to define your project to a person who might not even be in your entity, or might not even be in the IT department. So for example, a vague request can be make the website better. A clear brief would include who it's for, what it does, why it matters, and what features that we need exactly. If someone outside of your team can read your brief and know understand what exactly it is that you're doing, then it is a good brief. Otherwise, it's not going to be understood outside of technical people. Yeah, so what goes in a brief is the name of the project, what problem you're solving, the main users who will be using or benefiting from the output. Success definition is basically at what point do you consider this to be a success? At what point do you say, okay, this is good enough now, we have achieved our goals? Because if you don't define success early on, then you won't really know when your project is done. Now we talk about stakeholder. Stakeholder is basically anyone who affects the project or gets affected by it. This will be the main person will be yourself, the IT department, as you guys will be building the project, and then the immediate next person will be the people who you're building it for, and the people who are going to approve the project at the end of the day. Right? So if you're building, for example, some sort of volunteer portal, then the stakeholders will be volunteers, other entity executives, maybe the HR department, the board, and the admin as well, as they need to give certain approvals. So once you identify stakeholders, then you can start asking them questions. What exactly is it that they want? And you need to sort of think of as a user wants certain things. Your executives, the people who manage the project, they would want certain things as well. So you need to manage their expectations and come up with something that is viable. And yeah, so these are some examples that we already discussed. Yeah, so once you identify your stakeholders, you can then move on to requirement. Requirement is what the project must do. After you've talked to all the stakeholders, then you can start noting down, okay, what do we actually want. Bad requirement is something like we just want a better volunteer system. That doesn't really tell you anything. A good requirement can be that volunteers can submit their availability online before each event. That is something that is very precise, concise, and brief. So there's two types of requirements. One is functional requirements and the other one is non-functional requirements. Functional requirements describe what the system does itself. So in the example that we had, a volunteer can submit availability online. That is a functional requirement. However, a non-functional requirement is how well it can work. So that can be stuff like UI, UX design, and other stuff that you would want for it to work better than just like, for example, you can imagine a website just having no design at all or something that looks like from the 90s. It is functional, but it doesn't work well. It is not something that's going to be receptive if your website works, but it's not very easy to understand or use, then your effort is wasted. So that's why you have to differentiate your functional and non-functional requirements. You can start off with doing your functional requirements and then moving on to your non-functional ones. So once you gather your requirements, you also have to see if they're testable. If you have a very broad requirement, something like the website is good, that's not something that you can test. What you would want before you hand off and show the website to someone else in your team is for you to at least test if you have already met the requirements. Right? So something that is subjective, it can't be a requirement because people can have different opinions. Now, what is subjective? That, for example, the home page loads in under 3 seconds on a mobile phone or on any device. That is something you can test and you can get a clear result. Something like a volunteer can submit availability in under 2 minutes, or a completely new person can understand the website and use it in under 5 minutes, and they can navigate through it. So that it should connect to your definition of what your project is wanting to do, what you consider as your success factor, and then you can turn it into testable requirements. Scope is what we also talked a little bit about, is what you want to include within your project and what you want to exclude from your project. If you don't include or exclude stuff, then you will yourself get confused and other people might get confused of what your project is really aiming to do. So you have to define what your project will deliver and set clear boundaries so that you can stay focused on one thing and not fall into the trap where someone asks you when will this feature be ready. You have to clearly tell them that, hey, this is not something that we're building right now. We will get to it maybe in a later date. Scope creep, that is when extra work piles on outside of your initial scope. For example, features or requests that keep getting added after you have already started work. For example, you already have some sort of first draft for your website or your IT service, and then later on you get more requests, more changes to make. So from then you should stop immediately and re-evaluate the entire scope of the project and your requirements, what's actually going to be done, because otherwise it will be a matter of you take your draft to someone and then they give you more and more requirements, and that is quite dangerous, especially in Nixor corporate. It will lead to a lot of delays, it will lead to a lot of confusion, unfinished work, and it starts from very small things, just like one more feature, but then it will turn into bigger and bigger things. Which is why we define a minimum viable product, which is the MVP, That is the smallest, most complete version of your product, which solves the core problem and delivers value to your users. Um, in an MVP, you what an MVP is basically that you have all the minimum features that you need for your product to be working, all your functional requirements basically. Um, it works and it's usable, but it is an actual deliverable as well, but it's not the worst version of your project or the lazy version. It's basically something without all your additional polishing that you would have, right? For example, user input validation or some design features. That is stuff that you would usually not include in your MVP. If with your MVP, you could ask yourself that if you launch this to your users today, would with your MVP, if yes, then that is your MVP. If not, then your MVP is not ready yet. So it must meet all your requirements, and then it can, after that it can use additional polishing. So for example, with an MVP, in the basic website you can ship stuff like a home page, theme page, contact form, having a mobile friendly layout. But things that you can do later on after your MVP is stuff like having blogs, having an advanced analytics, gallery, multi-language support. That is things that you should be focusing on doing later. And how you prioritize that is there's an industry standard called Moscow prioritization. The M stands for what you must have, S is should have, C is could have, and W is won't have now. Won't have now is stuff that you explicitly exclude out of the scope for this version of the product. Then you move on to must have is your basic functional requirements of what you actually need for this project to work. Should have is stuff that can include design features, that include like mobile friendly layout, and then could have can be some additional polishing. For example, having multiple themes on your website, that can be a could have. But then won't have again is something you should entirely define first and then never look at it again. And then we turn to user stories. Um, so you already gathered requirements and turned them into a set of functional and non-functional requirements. How you want to define them actually is you would have different types of users. So for example, in the example that we were talking about with volunteers, the example is as a volunteer I want to submit my availability online so that entity executives can assign me to tasks without manually messaging everyone. User stories, they explain something from the person who's using your product from their perspective. You want to look at stuff from their perspective and define it that way so that you can test to see if what you have built actually delivers that. The format for that is as a type of user, I want a certain goal so that I can do a certain thing. And that part is the most important. If you don't know why you're building something, then you will probably either not do it well or you will build something else. So that's why it's very important that from your stakeholders you understand why they want some certain features to be included in the product. We talked a bit about success criteria and what the definition of done is. So done is not something like I've worked on the website, it's done now. Done means it's complete, it's tested, it's been reviewed by other people in your team, by your CEO, by your MOB, and that you've also documented it for maintenance purposes for the future team as well. Only then can it be considered done. Otherwise, it's still in progress. Then, if you don't move on to this definition, then you will have problems in the future. And a backlog is basically once you start a project, you should make a backlog, a list of tasks that you have to do in order to get the project to be working, and it's related to a single project. And that way, it maybe you think of something you related to the project that you want to do. So, for example, you want to install a certain plugin on WordPress to improve security or to improve some SEO elements on your website. If you just think of that and maybe write it down on WhatsApp, then you'll probably forget it. But if you add it as like a task with a specific title, a specific owner, a person who's assigned to do it, what the priority is, what the current status is, and what the success criteria is, then only can you confirm if this thing was actually done. Otherwise, you will spend a lot of time asking other people in your team if this certain thing was done, and it will lead to a lot of confusion. Which is why we also give a certain template on the CRP that we will look into. It will help you organize your tasks into one specific place where your IT mentor, your MOB, and you also yourself as a team can look over it. When you're defining tasks have to be very specific. They have to be something that can be owned by a single person and can be completed by in a few days. Something like building an entire dashboard, that's too broad. You will never really get any progress update on that. If I ask you from a week now, if you've built the entire website, you will say, okay, some things are done, some things are still left. But if you define it into smaller, more actionable things, something like creating a volunteer table, adding status filters, testing certain elements on your website, that is something then you can very easily keep track of, and it is specific enough that only one person has to really handle it and think about it. If not one person can own it, in the sense they can't, not one person can complete this in a matter of few days, then it is not specific enough. You should break that task down even more. So this is what we're talking about, the project board. I will open the CRP as well to show you guys what the template looks like. So it's the planning board within the CRP. So this is the template. We will add some instructions here as well so you guys can see how it should be made. But you can see here there are columns from left to right. You have your backlog that we just talked about. Then you have things that are ready, things that are done. You can have certain things in your planning as well, some future projects that you want to do. Then in the in progress, on hold, and review, those are where you put your tasks themselves, and then you can monitor them quite well as well. You should look into some tutorials. Well, Trello is quite easy to use, but you can look into some YouTube tutorials in case you don't understand anything. Otherwise, you can ask your IT mentor as well in your meetings. So this is what you will be using to organize all your tasks. So backlog is work that's identified but not assigned or started yet. Ready is something that's done. In progress is someone that is actively still working on the task. Blocked is also important. It defines if you are waiting on another department, if you're waiting on something else to happen for your work to be done. And in that case, you should tell your IT mentor about it so that the problem can be solved as soon as possible. Review is basically waiting for some sort of approval or testing, and then done is, as we just said, is complete, tested, and closed. That will be your archive column. Blocker we just talked about. Owner is the person who is responsible for moving the task possible. There can be a project owner, and there can be a task owner. project owner is the person overseeing the entire project, usually your entity CIO, or senior volunteer, and then a task can be the other people in the IT department who are assigned these tasks to complete. Sprint is also an important concept. Basically, in our context for Nixor Corporate, we define sprint as a 1 month period of where you do at the start of the month you define what goals you want to achieve. For example, what projects you want to complete, or what state you want to leave each project in. For example, if you have 3 projects, at the start of the month you say that we will leave project 1 in an MVP state, project 2 will be complete, and project 3 we will only do the planning and designing part for it. If you define it at the start of each month, only then can you really actually see by the end of the month what progress you've made and what still needs to be done. There, if you've seen in the schedule already, there is one scheduled tentatively for 24th of July. So by then, admin, board, and the IT mentors, we will take a look at your progress. We will see how your progress went, and then we will give you some feedback upon that. Right? Because if you don't define what you're supposed to be doing this month, then you don't really get to be on top of things. Because usually it also happens sometimes that you have too many projects going on, and if you don't plan them out well, then you will not be able to do any of them or complete any of them. So how you plan your sprint, you set certain goals. You don't just say that you'll work on the website, because you don't really know when the work for something is done. A strong goal can be that we will complete the home page, the team page, the contact form, and we will test the website. That is something that can be measured. So that is what you guys should be thinking about, and how you should be planning to do your sprints. Now, after this workshop, currently Cars is having some problems, but we will put an announcement on the Discord server once that's done. There will be some quizzes. They're not just mandatory, they're just for you to test your concepts and ensure your understanding. They will not take that long to do, or they aren't that long either. But this is something that you should do, so that you know that you've actually learned something. And if you have any questions from the quizzes, that you can bring it to the meeting with your mentors. Okay, if you guys have any questions, we can discuss those now. Does anyone have any questions related to the content that we just discussed in these slides? Something you might not be sure about entirely that you can ask about as well.
Shahzain, I am Mangal. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You talked earlier about the volunteer sign-ups and removing the need for manual messaging for each endeavor that an entity does, right?
Yeah.
Is it possible to also integrate the consent forms that we send to the volunteers in those online sign-ups?
Yeah, so this was
Google Forms.
This was an example, but yeah, that is an automation that you can work upon. That, for example, volunteers sign up through one unified form, and then afterwards, after they're shortlisted, some sort of email automation is used through Google App Script to send them emails automatically for the consent forms.
Okay, but it can't be done directly by the website, in the website?
Um, it can. There are certain plugins I think that you can use to. There are multiple ways you can do it. Either using Google Sheets or your some plugin on your website. But yeah, you can research upon that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or any confusions? Okay, then we will move on to some of the other material that we have. Um, you must have received this already. These are the mentor allotments. So all the weekly, you'll be having weekly progress meetings with your mentors to go over the progress of the team, what the status of the tasks are, and each mentor will be telling you exact time slot for your entities, and you can also contact them given their phone number. But for me, the Discord server is there. You should join that. I see not a lot of people have joined it. All important announcements will be made on the Discord server. Right, and this is our student guide. This is something that you should just look over. You don't have to read into it that much, but this has the schedule for everything, and then it has each individual topic as well. So today we covered until topic 5, I believe, until sprint review, and it defines what the key idea behind each topic is, some examples, some further information other than the slides. Right, any questions related to this document? No? Okay. Then we also have the Kairos dashboard. I will quickly show you. Yeah, so currently there's an issue. Once that is resolved, there will be an announcement on the Discord server. You can click the course page from here, and from there you can view modules. So video recording of lecture 1 will be uploaded here, and over on Kairos, basically it's a compilation of all the resources, video or document wise. It has everything that you will need, and then it has the quizzes as well. They're not ready yet, but once they are, there will be an announcement on the Discord server. And all you need to do to log into Kairos, as you just saw, you log in with your Google account, and you will have an option to join the IT Project Management 101 course. Any questions, any confusion? No? Then that is the end of the workshop. If you have anything that you're still unclear about in terms of your IT planning or goals that you may have, you can still ask those as well now. Any confusion at all related to your plannings? If not, then that's it. You may leave, and then for the entities.
There is one question.
Yeah.
There is one question from Eric.
Yep.
So, Sadhukar, I wanted to ask if you can teach us how to make a copy of the website on WordPress, or will that be part of like any other course?
Copy of your website. That is something I can send you a guide on, or I can ask your IT mentor to help you do that. But basically, there is a certain plugin called All-in-One WP Migration. It should be on every entity's website. If not, then I can help you install that as well. You can use that to basically make a backup of your website, and then you can then install it wherever you want to re-import everything.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, then that's it. Then the entities, if you have meetings with me, then you should join according to your time slot that's allotted. Alright, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Allah Hafiz.